What's going on, guys? Welcome back. I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to be giving you 10 tips on how to become a more well-rounded sniper on Battlefield 1. Hopefully these tips will help you make better decisions and choices when playing the scout class and ultimately get more kills and become a better team player. As we all know, Battlefield is a team play and objective based shooter. So these tips will be gameplay specific as well as some overall general tips. So, tip number 1 is weapon choice. Now, that might sound really obvious, but in case you didn't already know, each rifle has its own statistics and mechanics, so picking a rifle that suits your playstyle best will be a big decision to make. Now, in case you missed one of my recent uploads, I made a video giving a more in-depth look into these statistics and talking about the new sweet spot mechanic in Battlefield 1. So if needs be, you can head over to that video, the link will be in the description below. Head over there and hopefully that video will help you choose a rifle that suits you best. So, once you have chosen one, maybe even two rifles that you like, take your time to learn those weapons. Now, what I mean by this is to understand what are the best distances to use that specific rifle that you have chosen. Learn the bullet travel times so you can lead targets better and hit more shots on moving targets. Sometimes you won't always have the best game with a rifle, but completely switching the rifle all the time is not actually going to help you. Just take your time to really master that weapon, and over time you should definitely see better results. So, moving on to tip number 2. It's still in a similar ballpark, which is try new variants. So once you've picked the rifle that you want to master and things aren't playing out too well, just try switching the variant of that gun instead of switching the rifle completely. I often have much better games with the iron sights variant of my favourite rifle, the SMLE. So try out a couple of variants and see what feels right and what feels best for you. And again, that brings me to tip number 3, which is zoom multipliers. Now, picking a multiplier on your scope is very important. Find a zoom multiplier that works for you and stick to it. Dedicate your time to building the muscle memory of that chosen multiplier. Changing it over and over is only going to make it harder for yourself to line up targets. There's no point in putting a 20 times zoom on, let's say, a sniper variant of the Russian 1895. There are just better choices of gun to use at those longer ranges, so pick a rifle for its sweet spot distance, put a scope on that works well with that distance, and that should tie things up together for better results. So, tip number 4 is scope glint. Now, you know when you're running around the map and you can see that little flickering light in the distance, giving away that player's position to everyone. Well, that will be you if you choose a sniper variant of your rifle. You really don't want to be giving your position away like that. If another sniper sees it, then it's easy pickings for him unless you keep on the move. So you want to decide whether you want to use a marksman variant or a sniper variant, and there's other variants out there like the iron sight, which I prefer, but if you're going to choose the sniper variant, that will be the variant that gives off this sniper glint. So think about your choice. So, moving on to tip number 5 is to keep on the move. The worst thing you can do is be laid prone on a hill somewhere with a high powered scope, giving off that sniper glint for everyone to see. You're basically a sitting target. So instead, stay on your feet and keep yourself moving. It will make you a much harder target to hit. Strafe left and right while you're having your scope up to make sure the other player, especially another sniper, has a hard time lining up their shot. So, moving on now to tip number 6, which is try to find enemy movement before you actually scope in. A lot of players will often be staring through the scope, trying to find enemies in the distance, and while that's happening, they're not even paying attention to what's going on around them. If you're sat there with your scope up all the time, you're going to completely miss the assault player who's running up beside you. So make sure you're on the lookout for enemies before you scope in for the kill, and keep an eye on your surroundings. This will ultimately just help keep you alive and keep you in the game. Tip number 7 is strategic positioning. Now, it might seem obvious not to just run into the bunkers full of enemies on Argonne Forest, but a lot of players do, even me sometimes. Once you're caught up in the action, all rational thinking goes out the window and we all turn into a sniper carrying Rambo. But let's be real, if you're keeping your head in the game, you should be thinking about where to run to next. Which bit of cover should I use to get the best line of sight down a certain road or certain pathway? Sometimes it's good to stay where you are. If you've found a good position, people will always call you a camper, but you're a sniper at the end of the day. Sometimes it's a good idea to work your way to a good spot and take people out from there. But as I also mentioned before, keep yourself a hard target to hit by moving around and keep an eye on what's around you. So, tip number 8 is to use your gadgets properly. So, for instance, everyone's favourite, the spotting flare. Think about where you're shooting it and why you're shooting it. So a good example of this is if you're in a building with you and one other teammate and he's an assault player, but you know there are enemies all around you. Just pop a flare into the room and light up the enemies on the map. Not only does this help you, but now your teammate carrying an SMG also knows where all the enemies are. And this way he can help defend you as well. At the end of the day, you're carrying a ranged weapon, so you would need that help up close if you're caught out. Or maybe pop a flare into a house window just to see if anyone is in there or around before just rushing in. You know, sometimes it's good to pop a flare 100 meters into the distance, as long as your teammates are there pushing the front line. That can help them out as well. There aren't many good gadgets in the scout class, but the flare can be very powerful if you use it properly. So tip number 9 is pulling out the pistol to finish off a kill. So this, when mastered, can be very useful and very powerful. Most of your shots on target as a sniper won't actually kill unless the enemy is already damaged, they're in the sweet spot distance, or you've just landed a headshot. So pulling out the pistol and firing off a shot straight after you hit a target can be a great tactic to learn. It's a much better option than trying to hit a second shot with that rifle on a close target. When someone takes you by surprise up close, just get used to firing a shot and pulling out the pistol straight away to finish them off. And finally, tip number 10. Now this might sound ridiculous, but tip number 10 is don't panic. I do this a lot, especially if I pull up the scope and I see 5 or 6 enemies just stood there waiting to be shot. I often panic and I'll rush my shots in the hope of trying to take them all out, but likeliness is that you won't do that. But if you stay calm and focus on each shot you take, you will actually have a better chance of taking them all out. And that's something that I know I need to improve on, and that's why it had to be in this list as tip number 10. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this list, and I hope that you take something away from this that can really help improve your game. Remember guys, if you liked the video, leave me a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down, and I'll see you in the next one.